And PayPal's new Android SDK. My talk is titled Kicking Ass with Payments. So hopefully I'm going to cover some things that are interesting for you guys. My name is Tim Messerschmidt. I'm working as a developer evangelist for PayPal. And I'm going to cover basically three things in my talk. The first topic is going to be obviously what PayPal actually is, what we do. Then I'm going to talk about a thing called Login with PayPal. And then I'm going to go over to our Android SDK. So who am I? I'm, as I said, Tim Messerschmidt. I'm a developer evangelist. I used to do Android development in Berlin. I love Java, Ruby, CSS, whatever you name it, and I like it, except .NET. So what is actually PayPal? We are a huge payments company working in the internet. We belong to eBay. Who's using eBay? PayPal? Okay, that's good. Thanks. So we enable, sorry?
Who's not using PayPal?
I saw the hands. I'm going to talk to them afterwards. So we enable different merchants to sell stuff online, and we enable different customers to buy online. If we think about that in a very abstracted way, this is what you see. You have a sender and you have a receiver, and between those guys happens a transaction. For e-commerce, that's usually we've got one sender, one receiver. I pay you, and therefore I get a service, a good, something that I get basically back for my money. And there's mostly three requirements for any e-commerce, any payment. It must be secure, easy, and fast. And that's basically one of the core things that we do. A few numbers. We've got 128 million active users worldwide. We operate in 193 countries and regions. We support 25 different currencies. And PayPal is localized in 80 different countries, including, of course, France. This is our wonderful website in France. I have no clue what it says. And we are working with some very cool local merchants right now to bring this experience to you, not just on a website, but also everywhere. A cool example for that is McDonald's. So you can order your Big Mac Maxi menu with fries, ketchup, and of course a water for your figure. Via an app, you can pay by that. You go into the store, you collect it. And this is actually something that I find very awesome. But today I'm not just going to talk about McDonald's, hopefully. I'm going to talk about identity and how you can use that in your application to make your application even more awesome to use. So what is actually identity? Identity nowadays in the internet can be lots of different things. If you think about those services, who's using Google Plus sign-in? Facebook and Twitter? Most of these free services cover different things. I use, as an example, Google Plus sign-in whenever I use a Google service. Otherwise, I don't really. Facebook is mostly if I want to do something that maybe includes my friends. And Twitter is something I don't really care about. So I have three different identities that I use, but they don't really represent me. But also, you could use PayPal for login. And this is another, let's say, fourth identity that you can use in e-commerce. So if we think about that, we provide a lot of different data that you can use to make your app even more awesome and valuable, because the user has to enter less data, and entering less data is usually always good, right? So we provide you the name of the user, the address, email, the gender, the time zone, language and locale, so you can actually even customize your app around this data for a user so that he has a good experience. I'm, as an example, using my Android phone in English, but I'm coming from Germany, speaking German as a native language. So maybe I want to have my app that I use from you in German while I have my phone set up in English, or maybe otherwise, and you can realize those things through this functionality in data. Having a valid address might make sense if you do e-commerce, you send something to the user. Date of birth is always quite good. So you might want to think about using this. Integrating it is really easy because it's using the web browser or a web view in your application to actually communicate with PayPal. The user is going to see an optimized website from PayPal to do the login. And basically, we provide two different things to make this happen. It's two concepts nowadays known by techniques: authorization and authentication. Authorization means I've got different resources, pictures, text, data in the internet, and I grant you my right to access this data while not having the problem to share my identity with you. So you don't know who I am, but you can access my data, my pictures, and all this information. On the other side, there's authentication, where I really want to make sure you know who I am. That was formerly known as OpenID. Now, login with PayPal is based on OAuth 2 and OpenID Connect. Who has ever worked with OAuth in his application? Was it OAuth 1? So people that had to use OAuth 1 had lots of pain because actually it was so difficult to use because of tons of different headers that you had to add and lots of stuff like that, that nearly no one ever used OAuth 1 without a library, because it is that difficult that you cannot just implement it yourself. I mean, you can, but you need lots of time and you need to read lots of specifications. It's no fun. OAuth 2, on the other side, is a relatively easy way because it got redesigned to be more accessible, more easy, more lean and small. So the footprint is much smaller and it makes it much easier to implement that in your own application without using any library, jar file, whatever you want to use. OpenID Connect is basically the successor of OpenID. So OpenID had the problem, it was a pain to implement. It was not using OAuth, but people tend to use OAuth nowadays. And the guys at IETF, the Internet Engineering Task Force, decided to create something new, OpenID Connect, based on OAuth 2. But what it does, it adds an identity layer. So I can provide my identity, and also, what is very cool, you can add session management. So I cannot just log in at your service, I can also log out. And that's actually really valuable because sometimes you don't want to share anymore or you want to revoke the access. And with OAuth, you usually had to go to some really weird settings page somewhere hidden on their website. Did you ever try to revoke any service on Twitter? Remove any service? It's hidden. And really cool functionality that this does is it provides seamless checkout. So seamless checkout actually means is if I log in with PayPal on your app or on your website, I don't have to re-enter my password again when I actually buy something from you. Because it's annoying if I enter my password once to share my address, to have a user profile at your service, and then I have to enter it again a few minutes after that. That doesn't make sense. So we thought that we basically use identity in a new sense to make it easier for you to interact with your customers if they want to. And basically, this helps you to make your app more awesome. But there's one thing that's missing in this big part. At some part, you might want to think about monetizing your app. And if we speak about money, usually lots of app developers have a problem. They speak more about this money instead of lots of money. But earning lots of money should be easy, right? So at first, we have to think about two different concepts for selling stuff in apps. There is digital goods, which you might know by everything that you cover with Google Play. So downloading apps, buying music, videos, items for your games, all that stuff is basically called digital goods or virtual goods. And you have to pay that with Google Play in-app billing. So there's actually not a good way to use us with that, and I don't recommend it. But if you think about using physical goods, selling shirts, coffee, I don't know, anything physical, you can work with us. This picture is actually of one of our hackathons, and we were ordering tons of pizza and paying with PayPal. So that's one of the use cases where we really shine. Physical goods can, of course, also be a wonderful Porsche. Oh no, it's a Lamborghini, sorry. And to acquire these physical goods, there's basically two ways to do so on an Android application. You can use a backend implementation of PayPal. That's basically what you know if you go to any website using PayPal. As soon as you go to the checkout, it's going to be mobile optimized. So it looks good on your phone. But if you want to have a really cool integration, mostly you want to go with a native SDK. And we just released a new native SDK a few weeks ago. So I'm going to talk you quickly through one of our sample applications. And then I basically talk about how to implement that. So my sample app is going to be a wonderful football jersey or tricot store. It should have a fast checkout and, of course, a nice user interface. And to do so, I'm going to present a Paris Saint-Germain shirt. Any fans over here? Nobody likes football over here? Imagine it's a DroidCon Paris ticket. Any fans over here? Great. So you need some kind of button, of course, to do the checkout, because we see it's a shirt, it's a large size shirt. It costs us $59. We click on buy now. So what happens next? You get to choose your payment method, which can either be PayPal or a credit card. And if a user chooses to pay with PayPal, he has to enter his email address and his password, so the two credentials that he has. If you think about the big advantage, not having to enter your debit card or maybe credit card, your secure number, your mother's dog's name, all these information that you usually provide, that's all skipped because we have this information of you already. So I enter my stuff, I click on login, and now I need to confirm that I really want to buy, because for some reason I might have mistakenly entered my super long password. Okay, so we see this screen and we say, okay, let's proceed. It sounds fine to me. So I get a confirmation that this actually happened. So now the money is already taken off of my PayPal account, and that's done. But what actually happens if a user doesn't have a PayPal account or he doesn't like to use one? So as I mentioned before, we offer you to accept credit cards as well. And you can either do that manually by entering the digits over there. So usually a credit card number is around 16 digits. You have to enter the expiry month and day, year and your secure number. Or you can use image recognition. And that's really, really cool. So I had some guys over here at our booth. I was presenting the demo. I can do that afterwards as well. It's really cool. And to me, when I first saw this new feature, which is basically based on a startup technology called Card.io, I felt like this guy. I could watch him forever. All right, so how does it actually work? Usually payments are a huge pain because banks don't change their backend often, so they don't have really cool APIs. They don't use OAuth or REST APIs, no JSON. Even XML is really new for banks. So what do? At first, we are going to have a look at the Android manifest. You're all Android developers, right? Anybody never, ever touched an Android app? Good. Right. So sorry for this being cut off, by the way. So we have our Android manifest, and we have to declare a few things over here for PayPal. So at first, we need features. That's mostly for card.io. If you don't want to use that, you don't have to add it. But basically, it just says we want to use the camera and the autofocus. It's pretty obvious why, because we need to focus on your credit card to read the numbers. Then we need different permissions. These top three are pretty obvious as well. Network state makes sense because we want to know if you're connected to Wi-Fi or 3G or even not. We want to know if you're in Wi-Fi. And of course, we need internet access to communicate between our backend and your app. And the other are just basically vibration, if it recognizes something, and the camera, which is obviously needed for card.io. Our service basically works by adding a service over here, and we've got different activities. So the service is started for all the background work that we do, and the activities is what you are going to see, the different screens basically. And we need a few configurations. We need to set an environment which can be live. We have no network for testing stuff, and sandbox, which is our testing environment, and you can basically do tons of transactions before going live, because obviously if you're in production, you don't want to send around real money just for testing the app and implementing PayPal. Then you need to set up the receiver email, which is your PayPal account, and a client ID that you can acquire at developerpaypal.com. So then in your activity, you need to start the service, which is pretty easy just by having an intent. You add some extras for the configuration. Then you go over to creating a payment, which is again intent-based. So what we do is we create a payment which consists of an amount that you want to have, a currency and a description. You add it as an extra to your intent, and you just fire it against the service, and it will actually know what happens. We use start activity for result because we provide you data back. So we see now the onActivity result method, and if the result was okay, so the user actually paid, you get a confirmation object over there. If the code is cancelled, the user cancelled obviously the transaction because maybe he wants to have another think about it, or he saw something else that he wants to buy. And if it says result payment invalid, you might have done something wrong. So these are not really too complicated. And at some point, if you end your application, you want to end your service as well, because if the service runs in the background all the time and consumes memory and CPU, and you don't stop it, it's not good for your battery, so please stop it after a while. So now that you did this, you basically did already most of the implementation that you need to do to work with PayPal. But sometimes there's problems if you're using a phone, like you are in the metro, you want to pay something, and then the connection drops. And you're not sure, did this actually happen or not? Because maybe the app doesn't know anymore. So you need to verify payments. And we offer two different APIs to do so, for both the credit card payments and the PayPal payments. And we've got a long list of different criteria that you can use to actually check, did this payment really happen, or was it just like a connection dropout, or did actually somebody even try to hack my app? And there is different criteria in it, so we can have a brief look. I'm not going to through everything. Basically, you see on the left side, there's state approved, and you see a payment ID. You see on the right side a pay key, a timestamp, and an app ID. And if you provide that to your own server, you can basically do a handshake with PayPal. And PayPal will say, yes, this really happened, or no, this is fake. And so basically, you can update your inventory. You can tell the user, sorry, this didn't work out like intended. Do you want to try it again? But of course, maybe you don't want to add another backend. Maybe you don't want to add another API. You don't want to read the documentation. So gladly somebody did this work for you. It's an external company which did lots of different APIs for lots of companies, also one for verifying payments with us. So, who's using Android Studio already? Somebody here with Gradle instead of Ant? Okay, so this doesn't affect you. If you build your app with Gradle, which is the new build system that Android does, you're going to have one problem. .zo files, which are used for native code in your application, cannot be bundled in an APK right now. So card.io will not work if you use Gradle right now. There is a few hacks out there that help you to push these .zo files in your application. But if you see in Google Groups, it's not really the most efficient way to do so right now. But if you followed the Gradle cycle that Google does right now, I'm pretty sure that this is going to be one of the next features. If you build in Eclipse, you're not affected. If you use Maven, everything is fine. It's really just Gradle in Android Studio right now. It works with Ant, by the way. So for this whole library, it is really important to know that sadly right now it's US only, but it's coming over to Europe in the next few weeks. So it makes sense to begin already to implement this stuff. We have a documentation over at developer.paypal.com. You can find tons of open source at github.com/PayPal. And since I see that we have a projector over here, I can do a smart demo maybe. Do you know how to switch this? Do you know how to switch to the ammo? Awesome. Oh, it's not?
Yeah, I didn't realize you need to use that.
I thought it's there for...
Yeah, no, there's a laptop that's
Okay, yeah. Sorry, no demo. I would have loved to do it. So, we've covered basically two different topics in this talk. The identity concept, which is a long time ago. And basically, I'm really interested in who of you guys thinks about using something like OAuth in his application to make it easier for users to sign up. Not just PayPal, but any OAuth way. Or who does that already? Nobody? Come on. Okay. And who's using in-app billing already? Do you use in-app billing already in some way? Okay. So basically, the interesting thing about this is, since I told you we've got this stuff right now in US only, there is another library that you can use for PayPal. It's called our mobile payments library. But I would really just use it right now if you need to have these kinds of payments at this very moment. If you can wait for a few weeks, I would. Other than that, I'm open for any questions.
So when you switch to the worldwide library, will it support different prices for different countries, different currencies?
Yeah, so the question was if we switch to the worldwide new library, if we support different currencies and different prices for those currencies. That's basically what happens in the backend anyway. So that's according to your business account. If you have your account in UK, the UK pricing applies to your account. Yeah, that's basically. And that's why we make you to define the client ID and the receiver email in it, so the library knows which settings to apply. Okay. More?
When I use PayPal identity, can I also get data about the user, like the age?
Yeah, so let me switch back to this wonderful slide. So this is just some of the data that you get an age range and the date of birth. So basically, if you know the date of birth, you can calculate the age. And the age range helps as well, which is, as an example, 18 to 25. And one really cool piece of this data is verified account. So for PayPal, if you sign up with PayPal, you can verify your account, which helps merchants to trust you more because we know that there is actually a bank account connected to your PayPal account. And you can get this flag with the verified account. So that's actually a really cool thing. Any more questions?
It's related to this one.
Yeah?
How do you verify data privacy? I mean, I'm from Germany, so
Me too?
public.
Yeah, that's true.
How do you get the user consent?
So what happens is, you don't see that here, but we can actually do a live demo. I do it in the browser now, but because the thing doesn't work. But let's just quickly go into our developer portal, and we can see we log in. So 1 second. So since I logged in already in this service, I need to revoke my permission first so that you can see my login screen. Right, it's already clean. So now I'm going to go to developerpaypal.com, our developer site. I'm logging out, logging in again. So now it asks to enter your credentials, which I magically do. And I hope, nope, it doesn't show it because we don't require any specific data. So if you require, as an example, my birth date, you will see that my service wants my birth date from you. Your birth date from me, basically, sorry. So you see all data that you want to access, and it's an opt-in or opt-out. So if I say, okay, I want to share this stuff with you, I click on yes, I receive your data. If you don't want to share, it's okay, so click no or cancel. And you have to type in that stuff manually or don't use the service. So basically, if you use other OAuth2 strategies, mostly they just say a service wants to connect with you. Do you accept or not? So you don't know what's actually going to be shared. But with our service, you really see what is going to be shared because otherwise our merchant is going to be not happy with me and with you. But yeah, obviously that's a huge problem. You don't want to share something that you don't want to, that you don't know about. But it's really important to know the merchant is never ever going to get your credit card or bank account details. So it's really just the data that I just showed. Is that satisfying for you? Okay. Any more questions? You?
Do you plan to have a commercial account with Google to be able to pay on the Play Store or something like this? Is there other discussions or something?
I have no clue, sorry. No, I really don't know, sorry.
Since Google has its own payment service.
Yeah, I heard they have a service called Google Checkout. I never saw it in the wild, but no. I don't know.
Okay.
You had a question?
When you are developing and coding and testing, you don't want a real transaction, you provide a test mode?
Yes. So if you go to this website, you see that we have over here applications and dashboard. And what you can do over here is you can access our sandbox, which is the PayPal test environment. You can create basically several sandbox accounts, which help you to say, you simulate users from different countries with different payment methods, You can add money to those accounts or take it away. You can actually even look into the, which account do we use? So you can actually even see all notifications this user got from PayPal. So you really can see, here you see that basically you see the whole customer experience that is involved when using your product. So you see now, because it's a German account, that it says, Ihre Zahlung wurde gesendet. And so you can really basically have the whole experience without having to create 5 real-world accounts. And in our dashboard, if you use the payments on the sandbox or live system, it enables you to see the payments going through the API. The internet is just a bit slowish right now. Here you see different transactions, you see the transaction state, you see the sandbox notifications for your account again. So you can basically really test everything. The cool stuff is that you can even create a risk component. So usually if you buy with credit cards, it might be that your credit card provider, Visa, MasterCard, whoever, declines a payment for some reason. Maybe because you never bought anything above 20 euros. And now suddenly you want to pay something for 1,000 euros the first time while living in Syria and I don't know, like a weird combination. So they might decline it. And you can actually even simulate this decline rate on the sandbox, which is really cool. Any more questions?
PayPal related, not related really to the SDK. If you have multiple bank accounts in different countries, you need to set different PayPal accounts.
Yeah, so that's actually like with regular bank accounts. You have to create a bank account per country. If you move over to Germany now, instead of France, you have to create a German PayPal account. But you can set up the language always to English.
Yeah, it's not about without adding a credit card. It can, once you add the first credit card, all other credit cards that you can add in that country.
Oh, so actually you can call our customer service and they remove this card from your account. So you can reuse it again in another account. But obviously, so if you want to call our service, you log into your PayPal account online, you get a token to verify it's really you and not just somebody saying it's you.
Yeah.
And you can ask them to remove this card.
Free PayPal accounts in 3 countries.
Sorry?
I have free PayPal accounts in 3 countries.
Sorry.
That's not good.
But then maybe you should have free bank accounts in 3 countries as well. So, you know. Any more questions?
You spoke about in-app billing.
Yeah?
Do those people, the English version, would provide a sort of service comparable to that? Imagine that a user buys, say, the option to make all the ads disappear in the app. Okay,
Yeah, so I get what you mean. We support that. The question is if you should do that through us. So we allow, of course, to pay you anything, but the Google Play Store rules are not super clear about what you can purchase through Google or what you should purchase through Google and what through us. So we say for everything digital, you can add us as a fallback solution. So whenever a transaction through Google fails, because somebody doesn't have a credit card in his Google account or something like that, it's cool to use us. Or if for some reason Google Play is offline, right? But usually you should go with every virtual good where Google Play is available through Google instead of through PayPal. Sorry. More questions? I'm happy to show the demo at our booth or over here. Sorry that the projector didn't work. So if you have any questions other than that, you can still reach out to me via mail. Oops. So let's do it like this. And thanks a lot for attending this session.